Hello, this is Chipacon, and welcome to Changing Times, Changing Worlds. I mean, the Otherworldly, the Changing Times, Changing Worlds show, where we will be talking this show about uh, about defense against the dark arts, which is things like banishing and warding and uncrossing and unhexing and basically making sure that you're not hex breaking, curse turning, all of that stuff, which I think is important enough and is certainly shown to be popular enough. Everybody needs to know this. It's not unlike uh, grounding and centering.
Yep.
This is your basic solid stuff. This is where you begin. And so we got Starwolf, who's going to be going over it again tonight. And the first thing I'm going to put um, into the chat tonight, so you may want to catch it later, is the links to previous shows that we have done on Otherworldly with the same or similar
I know it's in here somewhere.
topics, so that you can um,
Nope.
you can hear these when you can go back and find them later in case you missed something. It's, as I say, this is the stuff that we really want to know. Now, ordinarily, what doing something positive is the first thing you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
but not when you're when things are going wrong. And before I turn it over to Star Wolf, I'm going to throw in one of my little cautions, which is things can go wrong without somebody cursing you. Things can just go wrong, or as we say, if you step in the dog poop or cow patty or whatever, there was no bad scheme. There was nothing wrong. The cow patty is there to fertilize the field. It's a good thing. You still have to get it off your shoe, and if you track it inside, you're going to have a lot more cleanup. so, so the first thing you want to do is cleanse. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to turn up, but I just think that don't always leap to, oh my gosh, somebody has cursed me. Because frequently there is no ill will whatsoever. It is simply, you're not having a good day.
Stuff happens.
Clean it up and move on. So,
Okay. Well, you've
Starwolf,
already.
wait a minute. What happened?
He muted himself.
Either that or I accidentally muted him. Oh, can we who's muting?
Uh,
There we go. I was
somebody.
trying to
There.
pin him.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go. So, yeah, that's the first thing. It isn't automatically that somebody has specifically intentionally cursed you.
Mm. Mm.
Now, there is the possibility, because we are a society that takes our profanity kind of lightly, that somebody with a modicum of psychic ability that they didn't realize, or spiritual ability, or just has an invisible friend that they didn't realize, you cut them off on the street, you do something, and I simply say, well, damn you. And, well, got news for you. That's a curse. We call it cursing for a reason. But for the most part, yeah, most bad luck happens because it happens. Because the universe is fair, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, first and foremost, if you think you have been cursed or hexed, get somebody who you can trust to check you. You know, get the local witch, get your friend in the coven, get, somebody to, even if it's as little as checking you with a pendulum, to make sure that you have not, that it is basically, well, I broke that teacup because, well, gravity happens. Or, well, the cat pushed something off the table. The cat wasn't working for somebody. The cat was being a cat.
Yes.
Sometimes your email locks up, your computer decides to glitch. And while glitch spirits are indeed a thing, exorcists for those tend to not actually be sorcerers or witches. They tend to be the people who work for Best Buy. But given that, 98% or maybe as much as or as little as 93% of what causes bad luck is simply bad luck, it's the other 3%. And oddly enough, that tends to happen more in our kind of a community than it does amongst the mundane world, because most people go through life 3/4 asleep. They don't notice things. They don't look. They don't see. The rest of us, well, especially when you are a not quite beginner, but not not a hoary ancient like myself, you tend to be far more noticeable. And that's one of the things that tends to attract stuff. It attracts parasites. It attracts pissed off baby witches who haven't really been taught properly. It sometimes degenerates, especially in our society, it degenerates into a full-blown witch war.
Oh, have you lost your?
I keep getting mute. Somebody keeps hitting the mute button on me.
I think I accidentally hit yours while I was hitting someone else's.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
But as I was saying, since the advent of the internet, our witch wars tend to be what they called flame wars. So as opposed to trying to turn somebody's neocortex into pudding, we simply flame them on the internet, which is, on one level, far more malicious and at the same time far safer, at least for the people involved. But having survived the New York witch wars of the late 70s into the early 80s, yeah, I'm glad not to have to constantly keep protections up. But having dealt with that, let's start with basic. Now, Chipicon already mentioned, yes, you need to cleanse, especially, when you're not living by yourself or not in like a one family house. You have to remember, when, pardon the scratching, it's allergies. When it is, when you move in, do a banishing, and remember, first you banish, then you ward. Yeah, because if you don't, you end up basically locking all the nasty stuff in the house with you. And indeed, if you're banishing spirits, make sure you leave a door or window open. Otherwise, they're going to run around the house like a squirrel, like an angry squirrel, trying to figure out how they can get out. But I tend to
Good
do
analogy.
Yeah, most really malevolent things, they aren't that smart. What you are going to tend to attract tend to be the spiritual equivalent of rats. One of the most common things I find I call them feeders. I don't know what more serious occultists call them. They feed on negative emotions. You find them in places where there's been a lot of tragedy. So you find them in funeral parlors, you find them in hospitals, you find them a lot in middle schools, because there is There is a middle school here in Connecticut that they built on the grounds of the old Fairfield Hills Hospital, which was one of those snake pit style mental institutions. And it definitely has things in it. I know I smelled one. Basically, I was at an event. Things were going slow. Nobody was interested in getting readings from me. So I just kind of pulled out my mala and started to meditate, because what the heck. And I was halfway into trance, and then I smelled something like garbage. Now, of course, I'm in a middle school. Somebody could have gone by a thing of garbage, but it went one way, then it went the other, then it went back the other way. And when I came out, I asked the merchant next to me, has maintenance been by with garbage cans? Because I've been smelling trash. And no. Specifically, what I think it was, is, like I said, it's what I call a feeder. It's a real low order entity. It's physically, if it can be said physically, it resembles kind of an amoeba. What it does is it feeds on negative energy until it reaches a certain point, and then it divides. And, it'll keep doing that. And face it, a middle school is just an all-you-can-eat banquet for a creature that thrives on, unhappiness and anger and dissatisfaction. Have I just described pretty much every middle school student in the world? I'm old enough to remember that when we called them junior high schoolers. But that is a good example. Now, to get rid of that one, I would love to, but that would require the school administration to believe me, and I'm not really interested in being laughed at by a bunch of teachers. But just to let you know, this particular middle school had one infamous graduate, the Sandy Hook shooter. So whether he was possessed, whether he wasn't, those things can attach themselves to people, and they do their best to generate as much food as they can by creating discomfort, anger, anxiety, unhappiness. It's basically the spiritual equivalent of getting a bad case of depression that doesn't go away and isn't your fault. So for that one, I would call, you almost need a full-time exorcist. The problem is the Fairfield Hill site is riddled with those. There are spirits that haven't gone on. There are, like I said, minor negative entities. There are the ghosts of former patients. This is, in my opinion, perhaps the worst place you could ever put a middle school. There's also a bunch of town maintenance buildings and the stable for the second company of the governor's horse guards, but those don't seem to be as affected, because the maintenance workers are just there during the day, and these things don't necessarily feed on animals. So that's one of the few places I know that actually has nasty things in it. And of course, there's also its mirror image on the east side at Three Rivers, which has been the subject of several, quote, ghost huntings. And I don't know why somebody hasn't gotten eaten yet. But that's personal. So let's start with basic cleansing. Basic cleansing. For me, I start at the north because I'm more heathenish, proceeding by the cardinal points anti-clockwise, invoking whatever spirits you are to bless and cleanse the area. You can burn things. Let's see. The traditional one is sage. I actually like to use thyme because it's a little more traditional for somebody whose ancestry also includes a certain amount of Central Asian. They use thyme there the way we use sage. Indeed, I've discovered if you don't have, once again, being big on improvisation, if you don't have any of the right materials, go to a dollar store and get a bottle of Italian seasoning. No, it contains the stuff I've got. It contains thyme. It contains sage. It contains parsley. It contains rosemary. That in and of itself is okay. Burn some of this.
I
Marjoram too.
like I like mugwort.
Mugwort is good, but mugwort requires you have an occult store available. This
No,
you
it
can get at
doesn't.
Dollar Tree.
It grows in my yard.
That not everybody knows where. And say you're living in downtown New Haven, not a lot of mugwort grows there.
I find that hard to believe.
Well, I'm sure it's there, but you have to know what you're looking for, and you have to be able to
Yes.
find it,
Yeah.
and you have to be willing to go on somebody's private property to pick it.
Yeah. I'm going to just say that I didn't notice it until I noticed there was a bunch of it. And then I went to my Peterson's guide on herbs of the East Coast, and I found out it was mugwort. So I looked it up, and I found it was for protection, insomnia, uh, 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 stomach problems, depression, and all the things that we have in our household. Herbs
Mm-hmm.
tend to volunteer where they're needed, which is why I find it
Yep.
unlikely that New Haven hasn't got much.
Oh, I'm sure it does. You just need to be able to find it.
At which you need to be able to identify it first, but
Or
that's not what
or
this
if
show is about.
you're in New Haven, you can go to a food co-op called Edge of the Woods. You go upstairs to their herb section, and you buy as much of it as you need.
Yeah.
But as I said, you can do a wonderful thing with just burning some Italian seasoning. Yeah, I know it was strange, but I looked at the ingredients a couple of days ago, and it's like, oh my God, this is not only a seasoning, it's a purification powder. And seeing I'm kind of big on herbal blends, I mean, one of my favorites remains Four Thieves vinegar, which
Hmm.
made properly is a cleansing aid, but it's also an ingredient for a salad dressing if you make it properly. I mean, when basically it is for me garlic, rosemary. Excuse me, I have a huge bottle. I can't. Garlic, rosemary, rue.
I put it in the in the in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes. I, I tend. Yep, let me. Of those, like I said, I tend to use garlic, rosemary, rue, and lavender. So you could theoretically use a bottle of herbs de Provence, which has most of those in it.
mhm.
It's amazing how many good cooking blends are also purification blends. But that you put your four herbs in. Well, I use apple cider vinegar, but you could use some sort of wine vinegar. At that point, I'd probably use a white wine vinegar. You put it in, and then you let it macerate for 28 days. Every day shaking it and saying, evil may come, but it will not stay. My Four Thieves vinegar chases evil away. So putting the intent into it that this is not only a blend, and as I said, you can mix it with some good olive oil, and you get a rather nice vinaigrette. The nice part is the longer it sits, the better it gets. And as far as the vinegar, you do not need organic vinegar with the mother in the bottom. Just a gallon of the of the cider vinegar they sell at Stop and Shop, or yeah, that will do.
Both of us. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, because when you are using any herb, if you chant, sing, charm, whatever, speak over it, it intensifies the effect.
The nice part is, like I said, like so many things, it's multi-purpose.
Do you want to tell the story
Which one?
that gives it its name?
Oh, yes. Goes back to the days of the plague, if I remember correctly. And there were four thieves who were breaking into the houses of plague victims to steal. They anointed themselves with the stuff, which apparently protected them from the plague. What it probably did was drive the fleas away, because vinegar has been used to get rid of fleas. Also, the mixture, if you drink it, it will get rid of internal parasites too, between the vinegar and the garlic
And the rue.
Yeah, that will, if you have
and the
any,
cloves.
if you have physical parasites within, that will help purge them out. But getting back to it, that's one of the good ones. I would make it up, put it in a spray bottle. Indeed, if you want to, you get one of those little perfume sprayers that it's about this big. You carry some in your purse or your pocket, and if there's something wrong, you can do a quick. People might sniff a little bit funny because vinegar. Why does something smell of vinegar?
Why does something smell like salad dressing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's only if you add the olive oil.
Mm.
Next one I use a lot of is a substance called war water, and this is real easy to make. You need a container, a large juice bottle, the two quart juice bottles washed out and the labels taken off. Okay. Works very well because they're cheap, they're inexpensive. The one I use is actually an orange juice bottle. You need that. You need some clean water, tap water will do. And you need either 3, 9, or 27 non-galvanized nails. Iron nails work best. Steel, specifically the square iron nails, they're called cut nails or shingle nails. They're easy to spot because they have a blued surface from the heat treating. You put those in the bottle, you fill the bottle with water, you cap it, and then you wait. You wait until the water is good and rusty and skanky and nasty. And at that point, you can put it in a spray bottle and you can use it you can spray wherever you feel there is negative energy or negative entities. Just don't spray it specifically on a white painted surface because it will stain.
Mm-hmm.
Will also stain clothing because it's rust.
Do you suggest that you should strain it through a coffee filter or something before putting it in a spray bottle?
No, as long as you don't get any big chunks of rusty metal, if you make enough of it, that will all sink to the bottom.
Okay. That's what I wondered.
And all you'll have is basically rust. Suggestion, make sure whatever you're doing it in has a plastic cap, because eventually the cap will join the stuff in the bottom. Yep. The other ones I use, because I am married to an asthmatic, I create a lot of what amount to be herbal tinctures. So I have a tincture of garlic. I have a tincture of rosemary. I have a tincture of sage. And those are made simply by putting the herb in a bottle, adding unscented rubbing alcohol. As this stuff is not made to be taken internally, you do not need to use vodka. You do not need to use food grade grain alcohol. Plain old $2 a pint isopropyl alcohol from any of your drugstores or any grocery store will do. And you will know when it's ready, because in the case of the garlic, it turns a bright pink. The others, well, let's see, the rosemary is a dark olive green. The sage is a lighter green. And you'll know when it's ready because of the color change. Because alcohol is an excellent solvent. As I said, for most of the stuff I use isopropyl alcohol because it's not meant to be taken internally. You do not feed some of this stuff to people. It's not good for them. Indeed, if you feed somebody war water, it will give them the runs.
Starwolf, I will point out that, many shows back, I asked about sage, and you said that ordinary culinary sage works.
Yep.
And I'm happy to tell you it does. I dashed off to Wegmans on my next trip and got a big batch of sage out of produce. Yep. And I still have a squirt bottle of it. and I like to run my fan in my room and spray the mist so it drifts down and gets scattered around the room.
The other possibility is if you have a fan, just get an inexpensive handkerchief, spray it with the stuff, and tie it to the fan.
Yeah, act as a diffuser.
Exactly.
Excellent.
It's one of the best ways to do it. Okay. I'm also going to suggest 2 books that you need. One of them is Sticks and Stones, Roots and Bones by Stephanie Rose Bird. It's a very good reference book on powders and potions and things. The other one would be The Magical Formulary by Herman Slater. That's available through Magical Child Press. Both of those are available on Amazon. Just opening it, let's see. This is a nice one. Useful. Stay away powder. 1/4 cup chicken bone meal. 1/4 cup powdered nettles. That one you will have to go to an herb store to get. 1/8 of a cup of nettles. 1/8 of a cup verbena. 5 drops of patchouli essential oil. That's useful. And you can get, by the way, you do not necessarily need to collect your own bones and grind them up. And yes, you can buy chicken bone meal at most garden stores. Of course, you may end up with a 10-pound bag, but or if you know somebody who is a gardener, see if they use it and see if you can borrow a couple of cups. Bone meal is a useful one. Another one, if you're trying to block things off, powdered up eggshells, otherwise known as cascarilla. That you can find in most occult stores. You can find them in a lot of botanicas. But if you eat a lot of eggs or if you have chickens, just, wash your eggshells out, let them dry, and when you have a large enough amount, put them in the mortar, or if you've got some sort of grinder that you trust, reduce them to a powder. You can use that to seal doorways. If you mix it with sea salt or any kind of salt, I tend not to use sea salt. I tend to just use kosher salt because you can get it in big boxes and it's inexpensive. Indeed, that's one of the big ones, salt. We've been using it for millennia. It does not have to be, it is blessed Himalayan sea salt from, no, actually a packet of salt from a fast food restaurant will work just as well. And it will allow you to, once again, seal things, dissipate things. An interesting way to get rid of what seems to be a temporary negative condition. Just take a glass of water, dump about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt into it for a moment or two, and that should temporarily dissipate the problem. What happens is when the salt dissolves, it releases a mild electrostatic charge that basically acts as a miniature electromagnetic pulse, which often will dissipate negative energy. Yep, salt. I mean, basically most of the things you need to deal with crossed conditions, you probably have in your pantry. Yes. That's it. Let's see. Yeah. Having worked for Herman, I have pretty much made every powder, oil, liquid, and water in that thing. Including, I don't know if it includes the relief incense that came out when the Necronomicon was first published. I think I've got the formula for that somewhere, but that isn't what we're covering on this particular event. Okay, other items you can use. If you can get it, actual black salt. Real black salt is made mostly in Japan. It's called exorcism salt. What it is, you take the ashes from a fire in which sutra scrolls have been burned. You mix that with water in which salt has been dissolved. You lay it out on a tray and you let it evaporate. Then you pound up what you have. 9 times out of 10, you don't get black salt, you get brown salt. Don't worry, it works just as well. Most black salt you get today, is what they've done is they've incorporated a little bit of charcoal in it, and they're passing it off as black salt. The best black salt, I said, comes from Japan, especially if the water that they've used contains a certain amount of sulfur, because sulfur is another purification. It's more of a purification mineral. I get mine from a friend who lives in northern Japan and splits her time between being a web developer and being a shrine tender. Neither one provides enough for her to live on, but between the two of them. So that's another one. Salt, obviously, if something's coming at you, you throw it at it. Other
like
things.
They did in Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, kind of. I've never seen Hocus Pocus, so I don't know.
Oh, you should. It's
Starwolf, I once read this incredibly massive book simply entitled Salt. And it listed every kind of salt that you could ever find anywhere in the world. And they talked a lot about how in places in Africa where they gather the salt is black.
Yep. Contains carbon.
All right, so that's just charcoal salt then.
Yeah, it's elemental carbon, coming from any one of a dozen sources.
Okay.
Most of the salt I know from Africa gets dipped out of salt wells in the middle of the Sahara. It's basically they're brine wells, so they are full of, it's a thick liquid. They bring it out, they pour it into kind of a mold, and the water evaporates, and they have cones of salt that they load on camelback, or these days on trucks, and they head out. Another one is red salt, which is a mixture of salt and cayenne pepper. Yeah, I also, for my own, I add a little sulfur and grave dirt, which makes it a multi-purpose tool. You can use it for purification, you can use it for hexing, you can use it for warding. And that's indeed one of the few things you don't necessarily find in an herb store or in just the spice section of your grocery store is graveyard dirt, which is it's another nice multi-purpose item. I have the advantage that I live in a town with several antique graveyards, including one that contains the sarcophagus of Dr. Lyman Hall, who was born here in Wallingford, Connecticut, and was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Oddly enough, he was not a delegate from Connecticut. He was a delegate from Georgia. Well, after he died, they brought him back up here and buried him in the center of town. Beautiful, big red granite sarcophagus. Excuse me, doing a quick time check. Okay, we still have 25 minutes. What else? When warding. Depending on where you live, you may want to do not just the 4 cardinal points, but if you're living in an apartment, you want to do above and below as well. Because you are not living in a 2-dimensional world, you're living in a 3-dimensional world, and who knows what the person upstairs is doing or the person downstairs is doing. Indeed, when we first bought this house, 2 things happened. Cathy went away to find a locksmith, because you always change the locks after you buy a house. Just good safety. And I went and I basically purified the thing basement to attic and attic to basement, doing everything so that the entire house was cleansed, making sure nothing was there. And over the years, this house has developed defense in depth. Not only did are there wards inside the house. There are wards outside. Basically, the foundation doesn't quite line up exactly on the cardinal points, but it's close enough for jazz. So there's inside, there's outside, and then there are at the cardinal points of the property as well as I could. It's not an actual circle because we have a rectangular space, and not wanting to cut a hole in the driveway, there's a small part of our driveway that's not covered within the circle of protection because, well, I had to do my best. But it is basically, I'm a firm believer in defense in depth. The more layers of warding you have, the less likely you have, if one goes, that all of them will go. And as I said before, when you are cleansing and banishing, leave something open. Otherwise, like I said, it will be frustrating for you and it'll be frustrating for them. Other uses. Okay. There is a condition that, well, because we watched Ghostbusters, we consider it slimed. Sometimes just general interaction with people leaves you with some of their negative energy. First thing I would do is, if you're up to it, take a shot of 4 thieves vinegar. Yes, the ick, being slimed. Some people just do it accidentally. I've only run into 1 or 2 people who actually intentionally try to slime other people. And they usually end up with very messy ends. But one way to do it is to take a shower. And this is called doing something with intent. You get a nice soapy shower. If you've got a nice, lavender soap, because lavender is a good banishing herb, use that. Work up a nice lather and use some variation of the song, I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. That's also a good way for severing connections from a bad relationship. You literally, you wash them out of your hair and you send them down the drain into that nice black iron pipe that pretty much every drain system is made of at some point in its construction, and they're gone. Also, warding and protection. We have foo dogs in front of both of the doors to this house, the front door and the side door. We also have foo dogs sitting next to the router that brings things into our house. And I've got another little set tucked up in the eaves of under the where the house meets the foundation, where the telephone cable comes directly in. Because that's something that wasn't in existence back when a lot of these protections were created. We have a direct line into our house that most people don't think to ward.
Now, I just put foo dogs. How about the water lines and such?
Water gas lines, line? We don't have gas. Okay. Our water line is iron up to the house, so I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
And it's copper inside, so I'm not necessarily worried about things coming in through the tap.
There we go. John Starwolf, there.
Yep. And a proper set, you have male and female. The male has his paw on what is called an energy ball, and the female has it on a baby foo dog. It's going, Ma, let me go play. But it's important to find a matched set. A few years back, Design Toscano sold a beautiful pair, and we have those out in front. And I actually get compliments of it from people who drive by. It's like, what are those? They are so pretty. And occasionally people will come up and they will turn around and they will walk away. I've noticed foo dogs keep Jehovah's Witnesses away. I watched a pair of them one morning start up our walk and then turn around. I'm wondering if something was growling at me. Let's see, other useful, generally useful items. Let's see, there is what I refer to as my hex breaker powder. Basically, you take salt, powdered iron, garlic powder, rosemary. If you can get it, a little bit of powdered silver. I've got an old quarter that I basically, when I'm making a batch, I basically file off a little bit of silver dust to mix in. That will pretty much disrupt and stop anything. It covers just about every nasty you could run at basically, once again, you can use it to seal a door. You can use it to, you can throw it in the air if something, you actually know where something is. You can drop it on an item that may be cursed, and it should short circuit it. If not, call in bigger guns. Let's see, other items, like I said, there's black salt, there's red salt, plain white salt. My carry kit has 3 vials of salt. I've got one of white for general purification. I've got black for exorcism, and I got red for if I really need things for either protection or, if necessary, hexing something back. I am of the opinion that a witch that cannot hex cannot heal, and vice versa. Let's see, checking time, 17 minutes. Like I said, other generally useful.
I put iron filings link in there because you said on a previous show that they're hard to find.
I have a bottle that I bought in a science store at a mall decades ago, and I'm still using it. It's like a pound of iron powder. You can also buy it in some occult stores as lodestone food, because you're supposed to feed if you're carrying a lodestone for luck or to attract wealth, those are the ones that they painted gold. You're supposed to feed it with a little bit of iron filings every month to keep it healthy. Lodestones are also useful for warding, because for something about electromagnetism that disrupts negative energy, not so much positive, but it will disrupt negative energy. So in theory, if you have the money and you have the equipment, you get yourself a couple of chunks of lodestone and you reduce it to a fine powder. Fortune Smiths, at that point, they're probably going to want to sell you at least 25 pounds of it, which is perhaps more iron powder than anybody actually needs. Of course, you could also use powdered iron to make a quickie war water. At that point, it would be 3, 9, 27 spoonfuls of powdered iron in the bottle, because the powdered iron will corrode faster. More surface area. Once again, make sure it is not ingested, because iron oxide is a rather potent laxative. It will clean you out. Indeed, my opinion is that's part of the origin of the Penzic plague, all the iron sulfide in the water there. Also, if you have friends who are sensitive to iron in any way, you may not want to be flinging that about, because it...
Like the Fae?
Fae or Fae descended, it can cause the equivalent of chemical burns. If they breathe it in, it can do all sorts of nasty things in the lungs. Not only because it is a powder, but it will effectively burn, and it can also cause pneumonia if it gets in there. So be careful. Know who the people you're with are before you start flinging powders and potions around. Let's see, we've covered war water, we've covered 4 thieves vinegar. Then I have a mixture that I tend to refer to as exorcist in a drum, which is a mixture of the rosemary, garlic, and sage tinctures all together. Somebody reads Pratchett. Yes. Also, basic tools. Like I said, you can get everything you need at either a dollar store. Most of the herbs you need, unless you were getting into really, really esoteric mixtures, in which case I'm wondering why you're doing this. You can get away with garlic powder, cayenne pepper, rosemary, culinary sage, which not only is far less expensive than white sage. White sage is reaching the point where in certain areas it is an endangered species because it's been overgathered. So I do suggest keeping your magical supply quarantined from your culinary supply, but if you run out of the magical, borrowing a little garlic powder from the kitchen is okay. It's just if you start using all the herbs for creating protective equipment, the cook might take offense. So let's see. I've dealt with warding. I've dealt with.
I would love you to mention the guardians you had at the Four Corners, the trolls.
Oh yeah. Well, they're not actually trolls. What they are, they're kind of what they are little. Well, they are bound to troll dolls that I got by putting coins in one of those little vending machines where you get the capsule out with the toy in it. Those are the ones who guard on the outside, and basically they are the physical manifestation of four spirits that I bargained for with Mama Shark. Basically, they are they are the children of Mama Rokea. If you look at them, with spiritual sense, they look like little shark-toothed dwarves holding really nasty implements, also studded with shark teeth. And basically I promised I would never eat her children, which is fine because I don't like shark meat anyhow. And for a set period of time, which is no longer necessary, I would give her a pint of rum. Round about now, I would go down to West Haven with a bottle of rum and drop it into the water uncap it, drop it into the water for her. In an emergency, seawater will work because it's salt and water. Let's see. Powdered iron works. Silver is hard to get simply because it's expensive. But like I say, if you have a piece of broken silver jewelry or if you have an old silver coin that you don't want to turn into hard cash, keep it. And when you're making something, just file a little bit off. You do not need huge amounts. There are also...
Or go get a bent or otherwise damaged piece of silver from an antique store.
Yeah,
one old fork or something.
A damaged piece of sterling silver, damaged spoon or a bent fork. Something that they haven't sold to a jeweler yet.
Or broken ring.
Yeah. Or a broken bracelet. Something. But it does have to be silver, not silver plate.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I've got a old 50-cent piece that is worn to the point where it wasn't really good for anything other than selling for either its metal value or keeping it to scrape for silver dust. Old mercury dimes, if you can find them, are also a good source. Doesn't have to be 100% pure. Coin silver works. So let's see. We are at... Come on. We have 9 minutes left. So do we have any questions?
Have you ever used a witch bottle?
Oddly enough, no.
You don't want to keep witches away, but I think witches
exactly. I mean, I don't really want to drive myself out of my own house. We do have a couple of, they're not witch bottles, but they are old. Well, they're not old because I don't know if they were ever attached to a net. There are a couple of net floats in some of the windows here to act as reflectors as opposed to
reflectors. Yes, let's talk about
mirrors.
When you're turning a curse, the value of a reflection versus other turnings.
Okay. Like anything, deflection or reflection is easier than just stopping something. The whole idea being that it's easier to turn the energy back on the caster than it is to simply stop it and ground it out. It's a lot easier on you. I've got a little chant that I use: out, route, trout, about, thrice times right, thrice turn about. We used to get a lot of chain letters. And occasionally Cathy would get chain emails. So what I would do, I would have her print that out, and I would basically burn it in the fire bowl on my altar using that charm and throwing a little salt on it to basically dissipate it. And the idea is using, once again, the concept that, you send back stuff to people 3 times around. Thrice times thrice turn about. Plus this particular gesture, if you can see it, that's the horns. That's the old Mediterranean. Well, I tend to do it like this, or I do the fig, or I do the fig, which is an exorcism, an obscenity, and an ancient salute for the Pope.
Not, yeah, but
Caro figo, Papa. Sorry.
So
I'm a recovered Catholic from it. Yes, I love multi-purpose. Well, it's also used as a fertility symbol.
But Pope Pius the Ninth had an evil eye, and they had photographs of people coming up to kiss. He was considered practically saint-like, but he had the evil eye. So if he looked at you, you could get cursed. But they would come to get his blessings while making the sign out against the evil eye.
Yeah, but probably doing this one, the horns.
That was just a yeah, they were, but there is something amusing about, yes, please bless me, person, while you're not, please giving me
bless me, but don't look at me. Just close your eyes and put out your hand.
The evil eye was often supposed to come from people, from jealousy. If you were admiring something too much, if you thought somebody else's baby was beautiful, if you saw somebody's wealth or happiness, you could accidentally give them the evil eye.
Indeed, 9 times out of 10, any curses that are put on you are accidental. Like I said, somebody says, damn you, and they have just that tiny kernel of unrealized talent. Tiny kernel of unrealized talent that almost everybody has. They say it with enough force, you could have a few days of bad luck. Mostly that wears off like the common cold. And again, that's the kind of one where, okay, you take a jigger or a shot glass full of 4 Thieves vinegar, hold your nose, down it, should go away by morning.
Well, it's the same reason why people take a shower every day.
Exactly.
Clean off the real world.
Exactly. Clean off the gunk.
Daily practices. Are there any daily practices that you would recommend?
Invoking whatever deities that you particularly follow.
Okay.
As you know, a lot of times I do not swear by my gods. I swear at them. So, I'm in a unique situation.
Well, I know who you hang with.
I try to at least say hello to them regularly.
You want to talk about amulets for personal carry protection?
Oh, God, there's lots of them. Okay.
You
let's
got them
start with
under
one
your
that you
beard?
can. No, I have them off at the moment because with the dermatitis over the last couple of months, wearing them when I don't have to, sometimes it feels like I'm wearing barbed wire. It's getting
You
better
can
slowly.
you
It's
can
getting
find them on the by using the links to the previous. Anybody who's listening can use
pretty
links.
much any of the pictures of me show you wearing the pile of talismanic jewelry that I normally do. Some is protective, some represents allies, some represents ancestors. One of these years, we will just go through my jewelry collection and I will explain what everything is. One of them is how you sneak a witch's toolkit on an airliner.
Oh. I was going to suggest that amulets sound like they might be rich enough subject for a show itself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, he's done that on some of the previous ones. I'm going to put
maybe
them
about time again.
people.
A simple protective talisman. You get yourself some white butcher string, and you tie 3 knots into it, and you thread a nail through the knots. You just carry that in your pocket. That's a simple one. It'll protect you against just about anything.
Okay.
Well, Heather, you were holding up your handy little spritzer you carry around. We were talking about a small spray bottle.
I held it up, yes.
And I don't know if everybody saw that, but we have a lot of them because, well, we got a note.
This one carries eyeglass cleaner.
Yeah, something that size works perfectly.
Yeah.
It's not going to be enough to handle, say, the Winchester Mansion, but it'll be enough to get you out of a situation.
Not even an episode of the Winchesters.
Well, I was thinking, thinking one of the famous haunted mansions.
Yes.
I was about to say, yeah.
But a lot of times what I carry with me is not so much a full, I'm going to exorcise this place and purify it. It's the get me home safe kit.
It's like a first aid kit that has one band-aid.
Exactly. It's the, okay, something bad here. I'm going to do this so I can get out of here and come back with reinforcements. Yes. Included in the kit is a mixture of poppy and flax seeds, which deals with Eastern European undead and some of the more anally retentive members of the Fae clan, because they cannot, and the reason it's mixed is first they have to separate them, then they have to count them, then they have to total them. Which, if you haven't left the area by the time they're done, you get what you deserve.
Yeah, really.
Also in my kit are a bunch of the little prayer flags that we get from the Charity for Tibet. They send them pretty regularly, and you can use those not just to bless, but you can use one of those to seal off a doorway if you have to. Just kind of thumbtack it to the top and let it down, and that'll keep things out at least temporarily.
Well, a lot of those.
A lot of what I carry with me is, I'm not going to be going up against the Demon King. I'm going to be making sure I can get out of here now and come back with reinforcements. As far as talismans, one of the easiest ones are the eye beads. You can find those pretty much everywhere.
Blue and white beads. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I used the bottle tree as a picture when I was advertising this. Are you familiar with the bottle tree? And
no, I'm not. Contrary to some opinions, I am not all knowing.
Okay, it's basically it's a thing down south that they take blue bottles usually, or sometimes multicolored bottles, and stick them on the branches of a tree, and or sometimes hang them from the branches. So at somebody's front yard, you'll often find a lot of bottles, and will keep bad spirits away. The way they use paint blue to paint the ceiling of the porches.
That one I'm familiar with, and red doors.
Yeah.
Sorry, purple doors.
Well, the bottle tree sounds like a piece of homebrew equipment I used to own.
Yeah.
But it's a real tree outside.
But in this case, a real tree.
We have a couple of shiny things that were put up to keep birds from nesting in our gutters, which also serve the unintentional purpose of acting to reflect negative energy as the wind blows and twists them around. Once again, multi-purpose.
Yeah, well, another thing about the bottle trees is they would also make that lovely tinkling sound. Other people who are even more asthmatic, you can dispel evil uh, negative energy with sound.
That's something I should
Yeah.
have brought up. Yes, you do not necessarily need to burn sage or even spray tinctures in the air. Um, let's see. Let me grab them. Here they are. I had them with me. This is a singing bowl.
Hmm.
It is a tiny singing bowl. I have one that is even smaller. This goes with me pretty much everywhere. It has a very, very high note, but you can use this to dissipate negative energies, to as it were, to smudge with sound, which is useful if you've got somebody who is sensitive to to smoke or pretty much anything that they breathe in. Does no good if you dissipate negative energy and send your spouse to the hospital in the process.
A bell or chime on the door is a good protection too, isn't it?
Yeah, yep, we've got one out by the main door that we come, the kitchen door that we come in and out. It's a little Tibetan bell. We also have a Tibetan prayer wheel, which I try to remember to hit every time I leave the house.
Okay.
I think that about covers everything. I think we're
We've hit our time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. As usual, it's some of the
Thank you.
most useful information.
Thank you for listening to me ramble.
Well, it's hard to cover it all, but
And sometimes you need to hear repetitions.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to try and get you to do this one because it goes with the theme this year, changing times,
Yes,
changing.
I have every intention. I just have to sit down and send in
But
the class proposals.
so
Mhm.
And
thank
this
you all. I will remind people that the conference is the 1st through the 3rd of November in Cromwell, Connecticut. Check the website and save the three dots at the top of the chat. Will save the chat so that we put a lot of links and recipes in there so that you
Mhm.
can make your own.
I'm
Uh,
just checking that to see if I don't have three dots at the top of my chat, but you know,
You're on
I
a different
have three dots
device.
at the bottom.
yeah,
but
yeah,
they could be at the
I'm on
bottom.
I'm
They
on
used
an
to be
Android.
yeah, they used to be on the bottom. He's now on a tablet, which is
Right.
different than on our computer.
Everybody's got to be different. Yeah.
I like portable.
Yeah, there's a lot to
Okay.
be said for that.
So
Mhm.
thank you. Thanks all for coming. Thank you
Yes.
for
You're
sharing.